It was a case that terrified an entire generation. For years, women across Yorkshire altered their routines, avoided walking alone, and lived in fear of an unknown predator stalking the streets at night. As the body count rose, public pressure mounted, and one of the biggest manhunts in British criminal history unfolded. Yet, despite thousands of interviews, countless leads, and a massive police operation, the killer remained free. The man responsible was Peter Sutcliffe, later known as the Yorkshire Ripper. His crimes would leave families shattered, communities traumatized, and raise serious questions about how the investigation was handled. In this video, I'll explore the life of Peter Sutcliffe, the murders that shocked Britain, the investigation that failed to stop him sooner, and the legacy of one of the country's most infamous serial killers. This is the story of the Yorkshire Ripper. Peter Sutcliffe was a British serial killer known as the Yorkshire Ripper. He unalived 13 women and attempted to unalive 7 others between 1975 and 1980 across Yorkshire and Greater Manchester. He tended to target women using a hammer, screwdriver, or knife to assault his victims. His brutal killing spree triggered the largest manhunt in British history, with all areas in the north of England terrified. The investigation into his crimes was heavily criticised and famously derailed for years by a hoaxer known as the Wearside Jack, which led police to rule out Sutcliffe because he lacked a specific regional accent. His victims came from all walks of life, including mothers, students, and sex workers. Police tended to concentrate on sex workers, thinking they were his only victims, and he got heavily criticised over it because they overlooked several other victims. The women who Sutcliffe unalived were Wilma McCann, who was 28 at the time and a mother of 4, who Sutcliffe unalived on the 30th of October 1975. Emily Jackson, who was aged 42, a mother of 3, who Sutcliffe unalived on the 20th of January 1976. Irene Richardson, who was 28, and a mother of 2, who was unalived on the 6th of February 1977. Patricia Atkinson, also known as Tina, a 32-year-old mother of 3, who was unalived on the 24th of April 1977. Jane McDonald, who was only 16 at the time and was a shop worker, and she was unalived by Sutcliffe on the 26th of June 1977. Jean Jordan, who was 21 at the time and a mother of 2, who was unalived by Sutcliffe between the 30th of September and the 11th of October 1977. Yvonne Pearson, who was 22 and the mother of 2, and she was unalived on the 21st of January 1978. Helen Reichler, who was 18, she was unalived on the 31st of January 1978. Vera Millward, who was 40, and a mother who was unalived on the 16th of May 1978. Josephine Whitaker, who was 19 at the time and a building society clerk. She was unalived on the 4th of April 1979. There was Barbara Leach, who was 20 and a university student who was unalived on the 1st of September 1979. There was Marguerite Walls, who was 47 and worked as a civil servant, and she was unalived on the 20th of August 1980. And Jacqueline Hill, who was 20, a university student who was unalived on the 16th of November 1980. These women did not deserve this, and I do feel for them and their families. But there was 7 women that fortunately survived and managed to give testimonies against him. Sutcliffe was arrested in January 1981 by officers as he was driving with false number plates. They didn't intend to arrest him over this crime, but because he was driving with false number plates, they arrested him for that. That's how they caught Sutcliffe. When he was brought back to the police station, police noticed Sutcliffe matched the physical description of who they believed was committing the shocking crimes. When police returned to the crime scene the next morning, they discovered a hammer and a knife he had quickly discarded in a drain pipe after asking officers if he could pop to the toilet. On January the 4th, 1981, the police confronted Sutcliffe and he broke down and admitted he was the Ripper. The police could and should have arrested him years earlier because they had interviewed Sutcliffe 9 times on suspicion of him being the Ripper, but was never charged and released every time. Sutcliffe was born in 1946 in Shipley, West Yorkshire. Sutcliffe was the eldest of 6 children. He grew up in a profoundly unstable household. His father was an alcoholic and abused his mother and physically whipped his children, and one Christmas his father smashed a beer glass over his head. Sutcliffe was described as timid and socially awkward, and he was very close to his mother. He disappointed his father because his father was into sports and Sutcliffe didn't enjoy them. He was really bullied at school for being small and introverted. This drove him to extreme truanting, and he left school by the time he was 15 years old with no qualifications. Sutcliffe worked a few different jobs that he was skilled for, but he ended up working for 2 years as a gravedigger. Here he developed a morbid sense of humour. He tended to open coffins to steal the jewellery off the corpses, and later claimed he was at the graveyard when he heard the voice of God telling him to unalive sex workers. In his late teens and early 20s, he developed an intense obsession with the red light districts of Leeds and Bradford, frequently spying on prostitutes. On Valentine's Day in 1967, he met 16-year-old Sonia Zermer. He was 21 at the time, and they met at a pub in Bradford. To people who knew them, they were an unusual match. His wife Sonia was very domineering, and while he committed horrific acts to the women he harmed, it was completely different at home. He was very submissive at home and would never raise his voice and harm his wife. Sonia had rules at home, and Sutcliffe often complained about her and the rules. In 1972, his wife Sonia was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and would often rage and lash out at Sutcliffe, and he had to then physically restrain her. To friends and family and neighbours, they seemed to be a normal, loving couple, especially after they bought their home in an area of Bradford called Heaton in 1977. Sonia had absolutely no idea her husband was a Yorkshire Ripper. She used to clean his clothes and hide his weapons, totally oblivious that he was committing so many acts of cruelty on innocent women. According to reports, she had no idea until he confessed to her over the phone call in 1981. Despite his confession, Sonia stood by him throughout the trial, stating she loved him, but officially divorced in 1994, 13 years after his conviction. At his trial, the court was packed with reporters and observers, who even camped overnight. Sutcliffe pleaded not guilty to unaliving, but guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, claiming he was committing a mission from God. 4 psychiatrists diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, leading the prosecution to initially accept his plea, a decision that upset the public and led the judge to insist the jury decide on his sanity. He showed no emotion in court, and he was laid back while sat in the dock, surrounded by prison guards. After 14 days and 6 hours of deliberation, The jury rejected the insanity defence and found him guilty of the unalivings, but by majority verdict of 10 to 2. Judge Mr. Justice Boreham described the crimes as cowardly and sentenced him to 20 life sentences, recommending he shall never be released from prison. The trial moved from Yorkshire to London to make sure he had a fair trial because of all the public outrage up the north of England. From 1981 to 1984, in his first few years he was in prison, he got sent to HMP Parkhurst, and he kept getting attacked by other inmates. He was then sent to Broadmoor Hospital in 1984 till 2016 and survived more violent attacks against him. From 2016 to 2021, he got sent to HMP Frankland after a medical tribunal ruled that he was no longer mentally ill. He remained in this prison until his death from COVID-19 in November 2020. Let me just stress the fact that the victims, I've lost loved ones in this case, family members, friends. The kids have lost their parent or lost their mum. So I do generally, honestly feel so sorry for the families and everyone involved. When I talk about these cases, I do think about the families involved, and I do feel for them. So I hope they rest in peace, and I hope the families and friends are finding some solace in knowing that he got sent to prison and spent the rest of his life in prison. Thank you for watching today's video. If you'd like to know any more cases, then comment below and I'll go over them in detail. But if you can give me a sub and like my video, that'd be much appreciated. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video.